point do we push for it to where it's real, right? Because we can talk about the separation of church and state. We can talk about the separation of white, black, brown, and Asian. We can talk about the separation of the haves and the have-nots, right? That's the one that's most important to me, right? Because that's where, in my mind, the movement left off, right? It left off when it was tackling the haves and the have-nots.
I understand where you are, but this is what I'm dealing with. Until we get 455 years of correctness, we still behind the 8 ball, because you got to go to the grassroots, to the hood, to reach that. Here, this forum, just for the mindset that this forum is taking place, you already a learner and a leader type of situation, in a sense. But you got to articulate this to your soldiers. Right. Your soldiers are in the hood, and until they understand that plan, right, and everybody's at a level, like these guys, I always recommend the book Sun Tzu. I went in the Marine Corps, right, and I said that's mandatory reading in every military college in the world. Why? They need to understand the strategies, and that's part of it with the white supremacy. Me, I'm unapologetically black. I deal with white folks. I make money with them. I'm a contractor. I do my thing. But at the end of the day, I want to go look at in the eyes of people that I can uplift and change, because we've been denied opportunity. If you as an attorney knows, if they put black folks, black men on a list of endangered species, we trump everybody in the world. And it's over years, and it's easy to say it in a simplistic way, but we got to battle it and go back to grassroots. Because no matter how good your FICO score is, and this is as a contractor, with an 875 FICO score, if I put $200,000 in the bank and want a $500,000 line of credit, they won't give it to me.
Of course, you still be redlined. I don't dispute that.
So what I'm saying is, why even deal with that instead of going back to doing sweat equity, where we came from, right, in that? And that's the movement that's happening, not starting, right, already happening in Philadelphia, because I went there because of the base. Here, we scattered. Right. The blacks, I walk by blacks out here in the West Coast, they don't even speak to me half the time. Not unless I'm in South Central or Oakland or down to Hunters Point.
Well, I understand. As a Southerner, I completely understand the disparities in hospitality between the West Coast, the East Coast, and the South. I agree with you on all of those points. But the point that I'm pushing you on is what you said was here, that unless we're going to get 455 some odd years of catch-up, right, then it's highly unlikely that we'll ever even out.
As a mass, yes.
Right, I don't dispute this, but the thing is, we'll never get 455 years of catch-up. So the question then becomes, at what point do we simply declare that this is the new way that we collectively are going to operate? Because we cannot do it without allies, right? And this is the issue that I take with the black and brown divide, right, is operating under the framework of where the civil rights and the equity movement left off, which was next step was economic equality, right? There's a reason the fight for 15 has sprung up in American society, right? This whole $15 minimum wage, right? When you look across the border, the people who were in those picket lines, they were black, brown, and other, right? And so the only issues that I have seen in my short time walking Earth that have been unified or universal to whomever have been economic issues and the issue of education. Everybody cares to have their child educated properly. Even the mother who lacked education or the father who is behind bars right now will still tell their children, school. You go to school, right? It might not be you have to go to college, but you go to school. The same thing, no matter what color your skin is that if you see your account hit a bottom line, or you are working 3 or 4 jobs and your back is giving out, right, you recognize that's not sustainable, right? So the oppression that I am seeing, while certainly racial, right?
Is it better for homeschool from the parent that's gonna give you the real, you feel me? Or is it better to go to school, how the public system is and we don't care about you?
It is both, and here is why it is both.
Break it down to me.
At home, you should be teaching your child the things that your son or daughter cannot get in school. But in school, the reason we created this institution is it does give children insight into the ways of the world, right? Things happen on the playground, and I'm using that as a metaphor, that are symbolic of what happens in the real world. You will see bullies on that playground. You will see barter and exchange when your snacks out of your lunchbox are different than mine. You understand value, right? And there are trade-offs. I mean, so there's a lot of things that happen in schools, and my schooling experience wasn't perfect, right? I went to a very good elementary school that was predominantly white and other elementary. Went to a middle school, my first year had a rough transition. education, but then wound up at a majority black school and thrived, and then went to Baton Rouge High School, one of the most diverse schools in the city, but you got a good education.
The oldest child of these.
So I've been all three children, right? I've been all three children. I've been oldest, I've been middle, I've been youngest. So I'm about to tell you, all right? So when my mother had this bundle of joy, AKA me, she was in college at the time. So I became her only son, and by virtue of being her only son, her eldest. When I was 2, she married my stepfather, who I consider my father. And so I got an older sister because he had a daughter previously. So I then became the youngest, but I also became still the only boy. Well, when my mother and father had a daughter, my younger sister, I then became the middle child, right? But still the older brother to a younger sister. My parents divorced, and so I then became, again, the older brother to a younger sister. So I've had experience in all three realms, right? Having the sun rise and set on you as the only and the youngest, right? Being at the front of the pack when you're the eldest, and then fighting for every scrap you can get when you're in the middle between two girls. So that's how that happened. But to your point, kids should learn at home, kids should learn at school. There should not be a time where they are not learning.
Now I want to segue back to what you was talking about. The reason why everybody has to have an ally. I look at all that we've been through, and I still don't see whites as an ally because of that. This is an issue that we need to fix and come together with us, and that's why I've always been a fan of the Du Bois-Douglas debate. The talented 10, you got to have some people that segue. They have it in all cultures because I've sat with all of them.
That's right.
It's just that I don't need media telling me who's the leader and not. That comes the deception. That comes in with the art of war to understand the deception. And then we have to understand that everybody in the world come to our hood to get our money. So we're not poor people, we poor money managers. We have all the things. It's just that we don't turn the dollar over. And if I can start with just 10% and turning the dollar with a blueprint, we can do our own thing.
I agree.
And that's all I'm talking about. And then when we get to that level where we respect it, then it's good. I mean, I'm still to this day, you look at me, don't even know my net worth, but when I walk, I still get this. Like, I don't want nothing from you. So as long as that happens, it's still going to exist because the only way for it to go away, the architecture of it, have to make it go away.
So now you have arrived at the chicken and the egg with which you have presented, right?
But I'm already frying both.
Well, but the thing is but can you eat both? And this is why.
You can keep both because you have to, the infrastructure, what I learned from the 60s.
Wait, but let me finish. Now, let me tell you why I say, let me tell you.
You've been dominating. I want to answer the question.
Well, the thing is, but you raised the point that this is what you've said to me, right?
That's your other point.
Well, I understand that. I'm going to give it back to you, and I'm going to yield, but hold on, hold that clipper. This is important because what you've articulated is 2 lines of thinking. You've articulated the facts that, yes, there are still systems and structures right place. You gave me the example that if I walked into a bank with $250,000 cash and wanted to get $1 million loan, I would still be looked at differently. But you say to me it's necessary to have this infrastructure so that we can do the community partnerships or the person partnerships that you say that you've done successfully in Philadelphia.
Correct.
But then you come back and say, well, you acknowledge that these structures are still in place, but that we cannot call on allies per se. Well, the only way for us to eliminate this structure, right, it's going to take more than our community to eliminate this structure.
I didn't say it didn't. I'm talking about grassroots foundation. Every ethnic group has that but us because we're diverse. Where do you come? Where do you come from the motherland? How far can you research your people? I go to 1870 Charles Jubilee, Acrobat County, Virginia.
Certainly.
So when the brother said, "Oh, that's Christian," I said, "No, etymology is Hebrew first."
Right.
And then it comes down, and then I've been researching this in my 60 years young. I haven't seen one white person in America named Jubilee. It originated out of Iran.
Right. I don't dispute.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying to you where I've been down there and I've researched me. I went over the Middle East and studied and when I look around and I see where we are, we need to get back to or what they call, there's always been segregation.
Right.
And it's never changed.
Right.
You know, so we need to get back to that because when we relied on each other, we had per capita more wealth than we have right now with all of that. And in order to do that, you got to go back. I don't need to sit at a counter with them. I'm not mad at them. Because when I come out here, when I go to work and see the building trades, I see Hispanics that look after Hispanics. What you're talking about is a concept that ain't resonated yet with the everyday working person here because I see the white boys looking at the white boys and the Mexicans looking at the Mexicans. And when I go to the brothers who's in the labor unions, I say, man, you got to step your game up. I'll coach you. I'll teach you. And you dealing with, well, I don't know, you dealing with fear. You dealing with people that are scared of success. You dealing with a doubt amongst our men. So my thing is, when I get finished at the grassroots, where you at? I'll pass them on to you.
Well, no, I'm with you at the grassroots. The question is what grass are we growing, right? Because this is what you've articulated to me is a mindset that there are a group of people that have got to be awakened to recognize that we are in a struggle collectively for a group of people, namely black people. I do not dispute this fact at all. What I am saying is that agreeing with you that the cultural mindset has shifted from one of community to one of individualism. And as you said earlier, the culture of individualism historically has been one of European descent, right? So if that culture, that mindset has now been ingrained into a people that have historically been community-based, the original question I ask you remains. At what point will this mindset shift to where we recognize that not only is it a collective community for us, it's a collective community for all those oppressed, right? Because we can still advance ourselves, right? Which I am all for. As a black man in America, I am certainly for alleviating the oppression that we're suffering in the streets at the hand of police violence. I'm certainly at the hands of making sure that we have jobs and that when you come out of prison, you should be restored to right relation with both the government and society. I'm for all of it. But what I'm also for is something bigger than the civil rights movement was pushing for.
I understand that, but who's more impressed than the black male in this world?
Right.
What person of color, what ethnic group of color is more oppressed than the black male?
I am not going to argue with you there.
See, so what I'm saying to you is, before I worry about the general community,
Right.
I'm here, and I have infrastructures in place that we already building.
But can we answer this question? Simple question. Can we as black people, even if we were uniform?
Off every time.
Well, the thing, I didn't finish my point. The point that I'm expressing to you is that if we are focused purely on us, there's no way that we can knock down the wall of infrastructure that opposes us with just us. We tried that.
You're not. No, we didn't.
We did?
We did it one time and it showed. When we stopped riding them buses, we changed the way of economics. And what I'm saying to you, you might not see it here. Come back east. It's still there and growing. Because we already in Philadelphia. I just left for me last week on my birthday, and I was at a meeting with some people. And with the indictment of Johnny Dock, who's the electrician boss, there's a lot of things shifting. We in position now. So once that shift comes, now we got a lock on this city for the next 20, 25 years. And that you will see a renaissance like the black renaissance in Philadelphia historically has been before.
In Philadelphia.
But what I'm saying is, I'm only can base it on a seed base where I'm at. I don't have a national program because one, LeBron ain't giving me no money when he building in Africa. Why don't Oprah, who made her money in Chicago with all them wars, and go build a school in damn Africa instead of putting it back in Chicago? Yeah, but you got to understand something. Now you deal with white supremacy thinking that when she was told don't back Barack Obama for 2012, well, we going to kill your TV station, she didn't. See, so Oprah made her decision. Money was more important than anything else because none of them have done anything of infrastructure that the Koch brothers do with a white community, that the Bushes have done in Houston, Texas. They couldn't test tube us out. They couldn't dope us out. They couldn't lock us up out. So now I'm a homogenized the race and dilute it. Since I can't do it in the lab, I can do it in person. And to me, watching what we went through in the 60s and the 70s and battling and dogs and all of that, to sit down there, you want to be my friend? You want to be my friend? Get my goddamn reparations. You want to get my friend, white folks? Y'all band together and give me my money. Until you do that, fuck your apology. Fuck what you saying, leave me the fuck alone, and don't come in the hood, because what we doing in the hood is what I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, Richmond, Virginia. I know what works. We got away from it. But me and my family, we talk, we 50 deep, and we moving. If I can see it with 50 people and the wealth in just 1 year, why can't I see it in 100? And that, what I did, is why I'm going back next Thursday to sit and meet again. I can't worry about New York. I can't worry about Richmond. I got to start with my base. You know why? Because there I don't have the Benedict Arnolds. I don't have the naysayers. I'm not interested down there. I want to strengthen the black bank that we have and move on. That's what I'm talking about. Jay-Z can come down here and put up 10 banks in Harlem. 20 million, 20 million, 20 million, 20 million, 20 million, and wouldn't put a dent in his stuff. But they will assassinate him and everything else. Look what happened to white man Robert Kraft. Once he tied in with Rick Ross said, go help Meek Mills. He got Meek Mills out. How you in Jupiter, Florida buying some pussy? You can't move in Jupiter without you got a $25 million mansion. Man. Come on now. That's why he said, no, I'm fighting this, because he knows what it is. Now you're going to see the gloves come off. If this is what they do to their own,
what they do to us.
I can't embrace them. I embrace them to make my money, because I'm like the old 1968 movie, The Spook Who Sat by the Door. The true story of the black CIA agent. I don't need to be on TV and doing all that stuff. When I do my works, you'll never know. There's going to be more than one leader. So it's not one to shoot at. And when you build the infrastructure of the base, I understand where you at, but I'm not there. Because you know why? The infrastructure in the black males are shattered. Bad relationship with our woman. Fathers were walking off, nudging. I'm one of the ones who fought. My ex got $1 million because I didn't have a prenup, because old school. Kept my son from me for 5 years. Cost me $30,000 for the private detectives and $100,000 to go get him. But see, Oprah don't bring a guy like me to tell you I'm not a deadbeat dad. I'm the kind of guy she don't talk to. See, because I'm real. She wanted to bring up that black folks made Oprah and white folks took her over, and she forgot her roots because of money. The money. You can have all the spiritual shows you want, but what are you doing? Every ethnic group comes back to their place and uplift their own people. We don't. And I got you. I know where you at. I applaud your accomplishments, brother. You down there. But what I'm saying, it's already being done.
I hear you.
And that I can't worry about the broader community right now, because before I worry about that child being a teenager, it has to go through the growth stages.
I get you. All right.
Yep.
Right. We could all take these local issues and do it. What I have seen following the art of war is divide and conquer.
Yep.
There's nothing that divides more so than a local issue, than a local political issue, than a local economic issue. The issue that I am having is that these local one-offs are repetitious everywhere. And so it does me no good if I have gangrene in this hand to cut off this hand to avoid this hand getting it. What we've got to figure out is how do we take this narrative, because we've been doing local well. There are local chapters of NAACP that are very active. You may not agree with the organization, but I'm giving you organizations that are active.
But you back about your money.
Well, I do not know their source of funds. I can't debate you on the source of their funds.
It's
Right. Well, I mean, I understand, but I did not come in so well researched to have the debate on where they get their source of funds. But what I do, okay, fine, the Congressional Black Caucus. I can throw out a couple of black organizations. But my point is that the local issues, at what point do we recognize? There's one issue that has done it. Black Lives Matter. And I know we talked about the spinoff from that with all other lives matter and all of that, but just sticking to the notion of black people and Black Lives Matter. That's an issue that happens everywhere. You got to turn me back. I got to finish this. All right. There's an issue. Right. That issue has been happening locally for generations, and it has now become a national issue. I would argue what made it become a national issue. Right. We saw Trayvon Martin in Florida. We saw Ferguson burn, and right, my sister-in-law was living in Ferguson at the time. Right. So I understand that we've got a stove that's got multiple local pots on it. I'm trying to fix the stove, right? Because I have seen where we've gone when we've gotten local, because I, as a black man that lives out here, could care less about what happens in Philadelphia if my heart was such a way, right? That's the issue of localism that I have, is that it breeds tribalism, which then breeds into this sense of independence or individualism, right? That, look, as long as we've done it right in Philly, y'all should be able to follow this too. Well, the infrastructure, that wall that you talk about, this history of policy, this history of redlining, this history of denial of loans, this history of denying opportunity for advancement, that's happening everywhere. And yes, we may put a chink in the wall in Philadelphia, but the Great Wall is still holding here in Alabama or Mississippi, right? Or New Mexico, Nevada, right? At what point do we all rise up and say, yes, this is happening over there, but if it's happening over there, it's happening to me too? That's what I'm looking for.
I know, and I guess you're not hearing me, so I'm gonna put it directly.
All right.
I got a guy down in Alabama right now that we looking at buying their little mansions that they have for sale before they start coming in here and refurbishing them. Nice properties out in Birmingham. Now, I'm talking to people. When I say I'm building a base in Philly, it's still a blueprint. somewhere along the line, before this great nation became this great nation, it started in Philadelphia and that tribalism, as you eloquently described. Then it moved to the other 12 colonies. Then it became all these states. And what I'm saying to you again, my brother, I'm building this to where it can go to whatever vehicle, every city we need. The Congressional Black Caucus hasn't done nothing for us over there on a larger scale of stuff to break economic, not even equality, but just inching it up. You can check any stats in any local municipality from the building trades disparity. But one thing they did get together, that we do community, they lock our ass up community. We're 6.5% of black men in America, but we 40% of the prison system. Because, wait a minute. That's the community base they have for us. Because, wait a minute, they put the money there.
Right.
See?
But you're talking national policy. You're back at national policy.
I'm trying
you're preaching to me local.
No. I'm telling you the infrastructure. Before there was the United States of America, it was only 13 colonies. It's the same concept.
I'm fine with that.
Okay then, but what I'm saying to you is, it's an infancy stage. I don't know what you're doing.
You just told me 455 years of struggle we've been in. That is my question.
I'm not talking about the struggle. I'm talking about
infancy.
If you want to start, you got to go to 60, 67, and 65, I think, voters' rights and civil rights. That's where you start.
So we're saying that we're starting there.
You have to.
Okay.
You had no rights prior to that. You had nothing prior to that.
Well, there was a Black Wall Street prior to that.
Yeah, but what did they do?
They burned it. I don't dispute this.
So what I'm saying to you, the infrastructure I'm doing, which I don't talk about certain days on camera.
I understand.
That you come here,
right.
it won't be no burning down this Black Wall Street.
I get it. So when you say infrastructure, do you mean the policies or do you mean physical infrastructure? Because I've heard your construction background. Now, when we talked about infrastructure, you talked to me about not being able to get loans, right? These are policy items. Right, so I want to hear you clearly.
Not policy items.
But
the way we did it before is sweat equity. We don't.
No, I understand.
You can do a lot of things without banks and institutions.
Yes.
I want to get away from that because that's been our detriment.
Peer-to-peer lending. It's happening right now in the digital age. I can download an app and get a loan from somebody halfway across the world that does not go through banks. But even so, that loan will still be tied to federal regulations. I can't receive the money even if it comes from overseas without clearing something.
But I'm not even with that. I'm going back to sweat equity and getting a
But
building.
sweat equity is not on the books, is what I'm saying.
For who?
For the law of this country. No matter how hard I work, if I work 18 hours a day and I walk into a bank and I say I've got
I'm not
sweat
talking
equity,
about that. When I say sweat equity, I buy a building.
Right.
I renovated with just my money, sweat equity and stuff.
Wait. How did you get the building?
I purchased it.
You purchased it. Did you pay cash for it or did you get a loan?
No, cash.
So you worked for the cash to get it?
Yes.
Now, I'm a minimum wage worker at $15 an hour.
I'm not talking about minimum wage worker. The reason why you're doing that because we've been systematically knocking out the building trades.
Systematically, yes. Systematically.
So how do you beat that? You take a guy like me who got in, and I go to the hood and teach him. I'm using the same concept as the spook who set by the door when he started taking the tactical stuff to the infrastructure that he had. You keep wanting to take it to a community, and we don't even have the personnel to be that big.
I'm not talking about community. What I'm agreeing with you that there are systems and structures.
Y'all do an excellent job, but I gotta hit this shit up. Put you over here, put you on the king seat.
Okay.
We supposed to be over here. I want to get I like it.
Hold on to it.
Yeah, because I have to hold it. I have to hold it.
I'm a visionary. I see something. Like, we can take this building, we can design this system, I can do this and do that. I was the general foreman running the Warriors Stadium, but they never dealt with me. I'm an East Coast black, and that's no disrespect to my brothers out here, but it's a different breed and aggression and knowledge. So what are you doing that for? That's the wrong thing to do. And then they bring in tractor trailers, and I'm crushing millions of dollars of stuff, and I'm looking at the waste. If I had their waste, I could do $50 million a year, easy. So that inspired me to say, okay, let me take this money. I'm gonna go back east because there I got the political connections. What you saying? See, all that part in my grassroots. I don't want to be specific because one, we on camera.
Of course.
And two, the people involved in it, we already got the mayor, the governor. It's a done deal, which is going to get there because I can go to the Tribune, which is the oldest black newspaper in Philadelphia, in the country, but it's in Philadelphia, and it's already having a problem with the diversity, again, not having blacks in the apprenticeship program in the city that's dominant black. Because when they had their money and the legislators came and said, you don't have to be a city resident now to work in the city. Everybody moved white flight out.
That's right.
Now white flight try to come back in,
That's
and they
right.
still choking us off economically.
That's right.
So the way I do it is, okay, we got power up at the state level. Certify us to teach our own apprenticeship programs. Now you got to give us the money.
Yes, because that comes along with it. And this is where the intersection that I'm looking for is coming, right? Because if we can set up in the political infrastructure, and mind you, the law that you just talked about didn't mention race. I'm quite sure that that law does not say that only black people or white people outside of the city are eligible, right? It was probably it was on its face neutral.
That's correct.
And that is the conversation that I am wondering. Is that the way we now have to shape it to make progress, right? Because there was a time where you could make a racial argument in the Supreme Court of the United States and be successful. Brown versus the board did that in 1954, right? You come back and you have parents involved in Seattle schools, right? And what they were trying to do in that school district, where they were trying to racially balance, right? Now they were using quotas and some other things, one side says. The other side says that they were trying to do it good-willed and good-natured out of their own hearts, right? But the point of that is that now a racial argument will not be entertained in the highest halls of power. So how then do we do that, right? Do we translate the conversation into something that galvanizes? We fundamentally believe in our heart of hearts that there will always and forever will be a racial undertone in this country. But how do we still advance the agenda when if I show my proverbial race card that this is in fact a matter of race, when you meet that wall of resistance because you brought that issue, like you pointed out the example of the young lady who talked about the gender disparity versus the racial disparity, right? Well, we know that gender has been a hot topic in this country the past 20, 30, 40 years, right? When you talk about Title IX, right, you familiar with that? Right, go ahead.
Where have white women suffered? Because that's what she was alluding to people of color. And this is where I have the problem at. If we stop letting them take center stage and speak their agenda, well, whoa, man, pump your brakes, girlfriend. Black man still suffering. And the black women that you're talking about, that women are getting opportunity, are the ones still dominant. Look what Vivian had to go through, who's a head basketball women's coach for Rutgers. But look what Pat went, God rest her soul, she was a good person, white woman. And this one, who's here? You got a privilege at one of the most racist institutions in the world, Notre Dame. And you're gonna sit here and talk about that with black folks? Black girls, there's more black girls playing basketball than white girls, there's more black men playing basketball than white men. But we not GMs or nothing. That's why it's an abomination, even though that's his money, you do what he want. Michael Jordan, nothing. Nothing.
Right, here I am with multiple letters behind my name and still face the systematic oppression of this country every day. So it is not just the privilege that we have or the resources that we have or the wealth that we have. I recognize that there is a fundamental racial undercurrent, right? But that racial undercurrent gets its life from laws that are racially neutral, from policies that are racially neutral.
Question.
Right?
So if you had a son, would you tell him to go to school or be self-employed entrepreneur?
I tell him both. Right? I tell him both. The reason I got set up with the degrees that I had was to make sure that I can set up something individually. My wife and I have already agreed that our children will still go to school because there's a certain thing called social capital in this world. Many doors are closed to you point blank, period, because you simply don't have letters behind your name.
Or you don't
right? Or you don't network to it, right? But even then, you only network with certain levels of people. Right, so right.
I just got to say where you're at.
Right, so I absolutely agree. But to make sure that they have access to whatever they want to do, they could do it. Right now, I am in favor of them getting at least a bachelor's. Here's why. Right, at that degree, you can determine which way you want to go. If you want to go upwards and continue on to a master's or a law degree, whatever, you have access to do that. If you want to not and just leave and then go start a business, or if you want to go work a trade, or if you want to go do something else, you're fine. But the reason I have 2 degrees in part is not only because I wanted to make sure that I had knowledge in both, but I practiced law for a while. Right, and then got tired of the practice and went full-time into education. It gave me the choice or the freedom to be able to do that. Go ahead.
By the whole time that you was doing all that, you was finding yourself also, correct?
Well, you find yourself at all points in life. Right, and that's, you will continue to find yourself until the lid on your casket is closed. Yes, I was finding myself, but I could have been finding myself anywhere.
True.
Right? So for me, right, for me it's purely, you can still graduate from college and be the dumbest person on earth.
Correct.
right? So,
It's a lot of them.
right. So for me, it is purely the fact that it does give you access to social capital. Otherwise, you wouldn't see people trying to beg, borrow, bribe, or steal, as we saw with the most recent university scandals, to do it. Right. This is about credentialing, right? Not necessarily the knowledge that's there, because I argue our public education system needs to be revamped so that we can properly educate and train people for the jobs of the future.
So do y'all think school education is better or street sense and common sense?
You got to have both.
Have both. See, this is what saved us. Our street wit. Our street wit saved us. And that's what I said.
Say it again, King, I'm sorry.
Our street wit saved us. When the police stop you, I don't know if y'all taught out here, but the police stop you, put your hands up on the dash and all that. You know, all the standard MO. Just like that movie, Green Book. To me, another abomination. Green Book was personal to me. We always took our track from Philadelphia to Durham, North Carolina. We had 300 acres out there. We go down there for the summer. So we stop, I get out, run to go to the bathroom, and it's white only. I don't know, I'm a kid. I got to piss. We've been riding in this car forever, it seemed like. And white dude come out there, let that little nigga boy do that. My grandfather knelt back and two other dudes came out with shotguns. He said, get in the car. The Green Book was made up to show us where we could stop at to eat, where we had, because we had piss cups now, because we couldn't stop. It wasn't about no white man, no musician throwing chicken bones out the window. That was all bullshit. See, I lived that, and that's the kind of that's the kind of stuff on TV that's not correct. That's the homogenization that I'm talking about, because it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. The Green Book was to tell you where you could eat, where you could stop, where you could go to the bathroom. It wasn't about that, and it's an abomination, and I'm tired of other people telling our story. You know, that's why I got to go grassroots with money. I don't need to. In the day, like you said eloquently early on, y'all ahead of the curve. It's the commercial that Common did about IT. You don't need a big budget to make a movie or DVD. This is what we need to tell our own story. Sell it. Put it on it, get your hits, whatever you do, but let the money work. I can't tell you what to do with your investment. I'm telling you what I'm doing with mine, because it's a calling on my soul.